So what do you think went wrong towards the end there? What was the real sort of nail in the coffin?
All debt at the corporate level was not due for at least over a year. Think about that. People think that, the debt was due and you couldn't pay. It wasn't even due for over a year.
With your app, a homeowner can order up a solar repair just like an Uber.
I think that the real reason, though, why we fell into this trap is that we're displacing a service.
What do other solar professionals that might be watching this need to know, and what steps do they need to take now? All right, welcome back to the Solar Surge podcast. Hey, if you're new to the Solar Surge podcast, on this program, we meet with the top CEOs and the top thought leaders in the solar and energy storage space. Now, this afternoon, I'm joined by John Berger, formerly CEO and founder at Sunnova, and more recently, CEO and founder of Otovo.ai. And we're going to be talking about all that's been going on with all the tumult in the solar industry here in 2025. But John, it's really good to see you again. Thanks for joining us on the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Joe.
Absolutely. Well, I guess, for those that aren't as familiar as I am becoming now familiar with your story, can you just start out, as you began a career, what caused you to pursue a career in the renewable energy space?
Yeah, certainly. So I'm not going to bore you with all my childhood or anything else of that nature, but I did grow up in Bryan College Station, specifically Bryan. Went to Texas A&M University. And I always wanted to be in the energy business, so I packed all my car up and drove to Houston right after graduating from A&M. I joined this firm that was making a name for itself at the time called Enron on power trading. I thought I was actually getting shipped out to an oil platform in the Gulf, and I got put on the power trading desk. And I got to work nights and weekends. And so that got me into the power business, and I've been in there ever since. During my time of both running a utility from the control room 5 weeks off the stage at A&M, during the Olympic Games in Atlanta, which is crazy, but it was a really good experience, and doing the power trading, I realized that, we need some technological, and we're overdue for it, change in energy. And then you start looking at the environmental consequences of what was happening. People were starting to appreciate more climate change and so forth. So I thought, this is really archaic what we're doing in power. And so why don't we make this more of solid state technology like solar, like batteries, like software, hardware, managed load, et cetera. I wasn't there on EVs, I got to say. I wasn't there until later. I said, hey, if you're going to make an EV work, you really got to rebuild it from the ground up. Interestingly enough, that's exactly what Mr. Musk did, right? And so that gave me a window of like, hey, there's going to be new technologies. And so I went to a business school and then came out and said, hey, I'm going to go find the right technology. And my first company, after doing some venture capital, was Standard Renewable Energy. And that was basically, and turned out, much to my surprise, to end up being a solar contractor for their southern United States for residential, commercial, and government accounts. And so that's what really got me into solar. I was searching for a technology, a solution, knew the power business needed to change, and found it in the solar space.
Great. And that was back in Standard Renewable. That was back in, was that early 2000s?
Yeah, mid 2000s, like late 06, 07, and then took that through the financial crisis, and then sold it right in 2010. And then I realized at that point in time, there was a company that was just started up a little bit prior to that called Solar City. Another one that was really new was Sunrun, and they were trying with the leasing and obviously a different business model with contractors. Sunrun's gone back and forth through the years, as we know, from having dealer relationships, doing it all themselves, having dealer relationships, doing it all themselves. But at that point in time, they had dealer relationships, and so I thought, you know what, that's what we need to do. We need to have dealer relationships, and that it brought about SunCap. Financial. We teamed up with NRG to do that. We were our own company, and then NRG had a buyout right, which they much to their surprise exercised it within. I think I had that company for 15 months, and they exercised the buyout right. So this is 2012. And from there, needed to wait out 6 months, I think 7 months maybe, whatever it was, and for the non-compete, and then started Sunnova in November of 2012. We didn't get our first customers, so we didn't really get started until January of 2013.
Okay, so I guess was SunCap then sort of your first foray into the solar financing space? Could you say?
Correct. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Correct.
All right. So then back in 2012, Sunnova's just getting off the ground. Tell us, back at that time, what was your vision for the company?
Well, the vision was, quite frankly, with SunCap, it's not like I got extremely wealthy on it, but I did get a check, and it's nice to get a check when you sell a company. And so I was like, well, that worked. Let's do that again. And it was really that simple. It was really that worked. Let's do this again, except let's keep it longer. And so we started it with a couple of backers in Houston, both oil and gas families. And, we had an idea and a vision that we would keep the cash flows, much like the midstream oil and gas companies that, I had, and some of my investors were, folks that had made a lot of money in founding the big, some of the big midstream oil and gas companies. So we would keep the cash flows. So if you looked at Sunnova, what it was basically three businesses. So you had financing, loan or lease, kept the cash flows, as opposed to like Sunrun sold them off. We can get into that, like lessons learned from John, and I can give you that about what happened. And then second, initial construction origination. So yes, we had dealers that would do the origination and installation, but you still have to have the apparatus and the systems and Salesforce, all that stuff to be able to do that, right? So that's the second business. And then the third was service. And in SunCap, we didn't have it. I didn't have it very long. So we didn't do any service really. And so that was really new for us. And so this is rolling trucks and fixing broken systems, and also billing and collections. But then also became, of course, especially with batteries, VPP. How do you sell the power back in to the wholesale system where you can under some program, or you got a deregulated market like Houston, Dallas, you can do that. So there was really those three components, and that was the vision. It was just, how do I just build this thing up and get it to be cash flow positive by keeping the cash flows and having more certainty in cash flow and take care of the customers. That was the vision of Sunnova.
Interesting. Okay. So, it sounds like it must be a very capital intensive business though. I mean, if all of your products that you're selling to your end users are in the form of some sort of a monthly payment, then it seems like you're kind of constantly in a capital raising mode, right? Internally, just to be able to pay for all those things and do the construction and fund your operations, while you wait for those monthly residuals to come in, or is there a way for the business to self fund?
Yeah, that was a constant question. And at the end of the day, yeah, it felt like it was one of those treadmills where you just kept pressing it faster until you fell off. And I guess I can laugh at it now, but yeah, I mean, it was painful. I mean, there's a lot that goes into it, and there will be some folks that are listening to this that are in, some of these other businesses, but yeah, it is a lot of work to stay up on that. It's also complicated by the tax credits in that you need different types of capital to all show up together, which is really painful. So you need tax equity, then you need to securitize. Oh, who's going to pay for that until you securitize? Oh, that means that corporate equity. Is it corporate equity or is it asset level equity? And you get into all this stuff, and it's I've tried to advise other entrepreneurs like, hey, this is what's going to happen. These are what these guys are going to eventually want. I know what they told you, but this is what they're going to tell you later after they're in. So there's a lot of things that it becomes you're right, a really painful process. Doing mortgages or auto loans or anything else is a hell of a lot easier than doing residential solar, hands down, because of the complexity of the different parts of the capital stack, because of essentially the investment tax credit. It really makes it very, very difficult. You're right.
Yeah, well, we certainly would like to learn more about it, but I've commented on this before. So solar is one of the only things I can think of where you're taking out debt on the assumption of a 25-year guarantee, everything's going to be taken care of for you. If you go get a home mortgage, yes, the bank is going to lend you the money to buy the house, but if the air conditioner breaks, you as the owner have to go and fix it. Same way you borrow money to buy a car, if the transmission breaks or whatever, you need new tires, you go and you fix it, right? It's not the bank's problem because the car needs maintenance. But solar was kind of sold with this unique guarantee, and it wasn't just the leases; it was the loans. It was basically all of this was 25 years. Don't worry, everything's going to be taken care of for you. And it just has not worked out that way. Obviously a lot of homeowners have been abandoned, but I guess if you step back and think about it, it was kind of an unrealistic expectation anyway. There's nothing else that you buy, whether you buy it cash or with a loan or you lease it. There's really nothing else that you buy where there's a zero maintenance for the lifetime of the investment. And I'm just curious, if you could explain how does the business model work for a company like Sunnova, or maybe some of the other solar leasing companies that are still in business? What has to happen in terms of, I guess, lease payments, in terms of monetization of tax credits, but like at a basic level, because I'm not a financial expert here, but how does the business model work? And do you think that the companies that are still operating today in this space, are they viable long term?
Well, there's a lot there. And what I would say, Joe, is why is it that solar ended up in this spot where essentially you have to forward sales service, right? That's what you're talking about. The Europeans didn't do it. They indexed to CPI, right? So inflation rate. I think one, as crazy as it sounds, somebody, and it's usually typically it was Linden or somebody around with Solar City, comes up with something, a number, assumption, and we just went with it. For in many cases, we're still doing that. I mean, it's really crazy, but that's true. And was those assumptions right? Well, it's proving now over time. But to be fair, 17 years ago, lots changed, even in just in the last year, right, in the world. Assumptions were dynamics different. I think that the real reason, though, why we fell into this trap is that we're displacing a service. And what you're talking about is there was a product sale that was done, and maybe you see it going to a service someday. Like, let's take your car. If Elon's right, and I was just coming from Austin, spending the weekend there. There's Waymos and Tesla, automated autonomous driving all over the place. And eventually, you're owning a car and what it takes to service it and everything else, you're going to be measuring it up against what the cost just to get a Waymo and go someplace. But we're not there yet, right? Not even close. But yet we're there with power because you compare it up to the utility. And so whether you were a bank that wanted to loan against it, securitization market, or a consumer, you said, hey, if the power companies charge me, the utility, the monopoly, 20 cents a kilowatt hour, I want to pay 16 cents a kilowatt hour, but I want to make sure it's 16 cents. And so you say, okay, we'll fix the service and it's 16 cents. Now, that hasn't exactly turned out because there's been more service. Should we have known that? We can get into that debate. At some point, did some people know that? Like in the case of loans, outside Sunnova, nobody sold service with loans. And they said many, many times, don't worry, there's no moving parts. I think you and I had that conversation. Don't worry, ma'am, there's no moving parts, nothing happens. Did some people honestly believe that? I'm going to go with the benefit of the doubt and say they did. Did some people know better and still keep saying it to this day? We know that's true as well. But we most importantly know that that is absolutely not the case. And it's a system. It's not a panel. And if you think about it, the bigger problem is whether it's a solar system or a generator, people talk about buying service, power service, with using a product reference. So what I mean by this is I bought a generator. I bought solar panels. How many times have you ever heard that? So to flip that around on people, I've said, really? So you came home to your husband, you said, I got a great story. Had a really great day. You know that place that you've never been in the house, the roof? I covered it with beautiful silicone. And I got even better news. It costs 35 grand, and I know we don't have it. I borrowed the money for that. And isn't this wonderful? Like said no one ever, right? And so what were you really doing? Were you buying panels, or were you buying cheaper power, more reliable power if you have a battery or a generator? And they're like, yeah, I was doing that. I said, okay, well, then reference that. Don't tell me you bought a panel. You didn't buy a panel, you bought cheaper power. And that, when you start doing that, then you get into is like, well, then it is important to keep that system up and running, right? It is important that if there's something wrong, that somebody rolls a truck out just like a utility does and goes and fix it within minutes and hours. We're just not set up for that. And so there's a lot of reasons for this. Some of it's our fault as an industry. Some of it's not our fault as an industry. The utilities have a lot of blame on their hands. They keep trying to point fingers back. And they're a cause of a lot of the problems. And we need to, more importantly though, figure out, okay, well, the consumer wants to be taken care of. They're buying a service. How do we deliver them a service in a profitable fashion so we can be around to deliver that service to them for years to come?
Right, right. Well, you mentioned earlier that, when you put together the financial model, you have to do it based on a certain set of assumptions. You don't know whether or not all those assumptions are going to be correct until, time plays out. But for my take, John, and I'd like to hear your take on it, but for my take, it seems to me that a number of the financial institutions in the solar space miscalculated the high rate of solar installer or contractor business failure. And I know that there's a number of solar finance companies, because I'm privy to a dozen or so cases where the solar finance company provided funding for a project that never got completed, or it got completed, but the system was never fully activated. And then the finance company finds itself in a position to have to go out and hire another contractor to finish the job or to make repairs. And I just don't think that, and again, I'm talking about a number of the different financial organizations in our space here. I just don't think that they assumed that, the correct percentage of contractors that would disappear or go bankrupt or just do bad work that would have to come back and be redone at additional expense. Would you agree with that, or what was your take?
Yeah, absolutely. It's something that warned about over and over again. And I've made the point that I think that whether it's the states, and I really think it should be the federal government, is one, we need to update our power industry regulations. We need to allow people to have consumer choice. We need to put some rules in place, such as, hey, you need to carry so much financial wherewithal if you're going to be out there selling a service product and guaranteeing service for years on end, right? There are some rules, but they need to be tough, stiffened up in this space. And in many states, there are no rules for that. Again, because a lot of the United States is under monopoly with utilities, this gives us the false idea that there is somehow fixed rate of power, and therefore we can lever up each asset, whether it's a loan or a lease, to the max, which goes back to the point about there's not much margin for error. We want to have a lower cost of capital. Lower cost of capital typically has a very high percentage of debt, think mortgages and auto loans, but that also puts a lot more risk in the system as well. And so when you mix that in with the normal risk of being a contractor, which there's a lot of boom and bust, I don't care whether it's HVAC, pool, pest, make building homes, whatever it is, those companies go under quite a bit. Why? Because it's all predicated on the people, and people have life events. People get sick, people pass away, people get divorced, have bad moments in life, and so there's just a lot of things that can go wrong, and they do. You're right, but that compounds the issue of having this false sense of security that we can lever up to the hilt of an asset over a long period of time, and that's fine, instead of maybe doing more equity funding. Every time you have coming out of the financial crisis with homes, what was the response? Well, let's not lend as much money to people to buy homes and have them put more money up on a down payment, right, which is equity. We should be looking at this industry before it's too late, because I'll tell you, when consumer choice arrives in this country, the updating of regulations, that is going to drop the price of retail power from utilities quite a bit, and it's going to cause some problems on the assets down the road. And people strongly disagree and say that's never going to happen. I think it will, because utility rates, I think, are killing people's budgets at this point, and there's no sign that they're going to stop going up faster than inflation.
I see. I see. Yeah. Well, it's interesting because I talk to people from Europe. I talk to people from Australia all the time, and they always seem to be amazed at the way we do things here. How our unique American ability to wrap a financial product around just about anything. I've commented before. In a solar system in the UK or in Australia, it costs half of what it costs here. And a lot of that is because of the way we structure our financing, and of course a lot of the soft costs as well that could be maybe squeezed out of the system. But John, if you don't mind sharing with us, more specifically, just about Sunnova, what do you think went wrong towards the end there? What was the real sort of nail in the coffin?
Yeah, I mean, obviously very painful to talk about, and I'll leave aside the personalities around, like, obviously it wasn't my choice to leave. I think everybody knows that. That aside, so what happened post that, I wasn't there. And so I think it would have turned out differently. That's my view. Never can prove that, understand that, but I'll just leave it right there. Now, what happened previously, my lessons learned. Three main areas. One, because of financing. So going back to Sunnova, the three types of business, right? Financing, initial construction, origination, and service. Financing does not conform, long-term cash flows basically, does not conform with U.S. GAAP accounting. Doesn't make it wrong accounting. Doesn't mean anything was done wrong in accounting. A lot of people like pop up and like this company, that company, including Sunnova. Oh, there's some accounting stuff. No, everything was done perfectly fine. Perfectly fine. My chief accounting officer did a phenomenal job. However, GAAP is set up to basically as suited to manufacturing companies. This is why your equipment manufacturers look so good on the financial statements, is because the accounting system is set up for them. These are all facts. These are not opinions. These are all facts. I will not do another company that doesn't conform with U.S. GAAP accounting, which means that I will not be getting into and keeping the financing. You're going to do the gain on sale, selling off the loans like Sunrun did with the loans and still does. And I guess we don't have to worry about loans anymore, unfortunately. But, Mosaic and a bunch of these other guys, you can do a gain on sale accounting, and that conforms to GAAP. Keeping the financing does not. And so what that means is, going back to a comment or a question you had, is when would you get to self-sustaining moment? Well, if you lever up every asset to the hilt to be competitive in the market, you'll never get there. You'll have to constantly keep raising funds. But the other side is your financial statements will never look good. You just keep growing, they'll just keep looking bad. So that's my one lesson, is I'm not going to do that again. Second, I thought I learned in my previous period of time, and since I already mentioned it was at Enron, obviously I was 22 years old and didn't really have anything to do with that, but I thought all debt was debt, asset level debt, corporate debt. And, up until really 2 weeks ago or so, there was no amount of debt on the corporate level at Sunnova that was even current. And what that means is it was not due for yet another year, which means that at the time of bankruptcy filing, all debt at the corporate level was not due for at least over a year. Think about that. People think that, the debt was due and you couldn't pay. It wasn't even due for over a year at the time of bankruptcy. So why is that important? What it tells you is that on the other side, I never got a single question about the asset level debt, even though there was maturities inside the corporate debt, which was stacked out a number of years on the corporate debt. It wasn't like all $2 billion was due in one day in 2026, late 26. And so what that tells me is that there is a difference between corporate and asset level debts, particularly in the public company. And it's not all debt's created equal. So that's the second lesson. Third lesson is convertible debt. I understand the hedging. I get all that. I get the economics. I get to understand the finance. I get everything. However, the mix between credit public credit markets and public equity markets, and having those investors cross is nasty, and it's not good. It can work in your favor in the case of when Musk was doing it for Tesla when he was building it up, but that which can work in your favor on a leverage basis on the way up can work just as bad, if not worse on the way down, and that's what happened. And so that was weaponized. I would never do converts again. I made that very clear actually when I was still running Sunnova. So those are the three major lessons. The rest of the stuff is, like I said, personalities and so forth involved. It's heartbreaking, for me, not just financial breaking. Obviously it was, but heartbreaking to see what happened to Sunnova. And, part of me hopes to, learn from those mistakes and surround ourselves with a little better, folks at the end there. And I think I have that now, and do a better job and take care of customers and solve some of the problems this industry has and get it moving in the direction that I think is its destiny.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I want to talk more about your new venture and kind of where you see the market and the industry going in the future. But I do think it's important that the industry hear from you directly, based on what you know now or based on what you learned through that process at Sunnova. What does the industry need to know and adjust now? Similar to the the subprime mortgage crisis. I'm thinking, like, are there some things that we need to stop doing immediately? If any of the companies that are still operating in that space in the business model, third party ownership, financing, because that seems to be what all the talk is. Everything's going to go to TPO. Everything's going to go to TPO. Well, that's great. That's great, and I understand that there's still a way to monetize the tax credit for homeowners using that model than versus a straight purchase after 2026. But I find myself asking myself, but are any of these TPO companies viable long term? Is it possible that Sunnova was not a unique occurrence and that maybe it was just the first one to show weakness in the model? Are there other companies? And I'm not going to put you on the spot to name names, but are you concerned that the third party ownership model for residential systems in general, is that model potentially unsound? Do you think other companies might be at risk?
Well, Sunnova wasn't the first, right? SunPower went down.
Well, yeah, right. SunPower, of
and
course, and
then now
Mosaic on the loan side.
PosiGen's gone down, and so there's been a lot of others. One Roof. I mean, it's been a lot. You got to give Sunrun credit, right, to have survived all these different. They did a better job of navigating this, pretty bad crisis than I did, frankly. What I would say is one lesson is that I think, particularly in a highly volatile cost of capital market that we're still find ourselves in, and may for a long time, that the big balance sheet companies, like your big asset managers, insurance companies, big banks, they really should be the ones that hold the assets. They have enough balance sheet to withstand this kind of cost of capital and policy whipsaw that we've been living, and again we may continue to live through. So I think that's one thing, is if we can get something where there's like what they call a forward flow agreement and a mandatory purchase to take that risk off those balance sheets of these financing companies, I think that works. So if you do your homework and really look to see what the sources of capital and are they keeping the assets or not. And I think that's one. Two, I think we need to focus more. So I think that, as I just went through, I clearly thought that Sunnova itself was too complex to manage, too complex in the financial statements, too complex in between, the initial origination, which is highly volatile. As we all know, the financing and the risk associated with that, with the surge in rates, the change flip-flop in policy. Flip-flop makes it sound very benign. We all know it wasn't. And then coupled up with, hey, I've got this obligation to serve for 25 years to the customer. Did I afford to sell that too cheaply? All the TPO did, including Sunnova. It's too cheap. Doesn't make any sense. This is why service is a problem in the industry. We need to we need to increase the pricing on the service. Why is that? Well, nobody knew what a tariff was when this was set 17 years ago. Nobody, cost of capital was going down and deflation, and price of panels were on their way to go down, crashing 95% because the Chinese were ramping up the production. Batteries too, later on. So there's a lot of things that have changed, and so there is risk within that TPO side on the cost of service on a forward basis, absolutely. And so we need to watch that. I think a better thing, and I'm going to predict that we will see a trend, is those three businesses. They get somebody has also installation and origination on a payroll, so being the contractor. Those businesses need to be broken up and separated, and I think a lot less risk will be in the system. And I predict that that's exactly what's going to happen. We're going to have more focus in individual companies, and some companies, some functions like financing, like initial origination, should just be private and not be in the public market at all. It's just too volatile. It's not a good mix. It should just stay in the private world.
Just a quick word from our sponsor, Generac. If you're looking for an all-in-one solar and energy management system, then you need to take a look at the new Generac PowerCell 2. PowerCell 2 gives you total control of your home's energy system, incorporating solar power, whole house backup, intelligent load control, and generator support seamlessly integrated on a single platform. PowerCell 2 uses an AC-coupled architecture to facilitate ease of installation for new systems and retrofitting battery storage to existing solar homes. So if you'd like to learn more information, then go to the PowerCell website or click the link in the description below so you can get in touch with an installer right away. So do you see any change in how these tax credits are packaged and monetized? I understand that is a central component to the business, right? Is being able to sort of sell this tax equity or to find tax equity investors to monetize the tax credits that are generated by these new systems?
Well, I am concerned that there will be enough tax equity. It seems like that market's starting to stabilize a little bit. Post election, a lot of firms just said, "Well, I'm out," abruptly, and that caused part of the problems for me for Sunnova. But I do see some stabilization. I think the mix of a prepaid lease and a loan, I can see it, I can understand it, I can see where the value is for the customer. But man, you're taking something that's already too complex per my comments, and you're making it more complex. That's a fact. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? I think that's a debate we should have. I can be swayed either way. Just trying to be very balanced about it. But I mean, is it really our fault? No, that's really the fault of the politicians of doing that, taking away an investment tax credit from the people that pay the taxes to fund those things and giving them to essentially monopolies for the most part and commercial entities is wrong. Just wrong. But that's what happened.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think any of us in the industry appreciated seeing that 25D go away. And I know we only have a few more years, for the residential TPO credit. But what do you think the lasting impact of the so-called Big Beautiful Bill is going to be on the solar industry?
I think we're all starting to wonder what the next swing back is on policy. And you made mention of our systems cost a lot more than, say, Australia, Japan, Europe. I mean, there's a trend here. Everybody else is way cheaper than we are. Well, when you subsidize as a percentage of cost, you shouldn't be surprised that your cost stays high relative to everybody else. So that's the way that we've chosen to essentially put a price on carbon, is the way I'd put it, right? Secondly, we have a very Byzantine, backwards, needs updating really badly regulatory structure for power in this country, and we have to update it. We should not have this kind of ruling where you have so many different rules on, very even by city. That's crazy, and it drives up a lot of soft costs. We all know that too. So there's been the solar app and some other things that have been out there to try to do something about this. But, the utilities are not exactly, for the most part, enthusiastic about making those kind of changes to allow the competition to become even cheaper. And so, again, going back, we need to have some updating of regulations. So with that said, is like what happened on the bill. I still think that we are going to have a good industry. I think that we're going to have a lot of pull forward. We're seeing that now in the third quarter and the fourth quarter because of 25D expiry. I think the first and second is going to be a big drop because you're going to have a pull forward demand just based on experience, what I've seen when these subsidies go away. And I think that we're going to have to deal with some pretty brutal first half of the year for a lot of contractors and so forth to adjust to that. But then the macro takes over. What's going on in the economy? Are banks going to lend money easily to solar contractors or not? What are interest rates? Interest rates are coming down now, right? Again, that is a positive, for the industry. So we got some positives in there. And then the other one that really matters is, what are utility rates going to do? Well, it looks like they're screaming higher because of AI power demand and a bunch of the other things that we have going on policy-wise. We want to bring back aluminum smelting companies and steel companies and manufacturing. Those are all very power-intensive, hungry companies that we've been exporting since the 1980s, namely to China. So there's some cross currents here that are really important. And I think ultimately, it ends up being that the utility rates are dictating our industry's growth. And given that I am pretty bullish on utility rates going up, I think that you have to be bullish on our industry, which I know is counterintuitive at this point in time. But I'm actually quite constructive on it. And we solve the service problem that we're trying to do. Then I think we've got ourselves a nice industry. And then you update the regulations in the country, then I think we've got a really, really great industry that we've all wanted for a long period of time.
Yeah. No, I agree. Solar's got a bright future. We've got to fix the problems, but the technology's here. It's ready. It's cost competitive if you do it the right way. I'd personally like to see it to where you buy a new home or you build a new home, and solar is an option that you can check or not check, and it's rolled into the cost of the home. You can roll it into the mortgage, write off your interest, get a good competitive interest rate, and not have to worry about it. But I guess we'll see. Well, John, let me switch gears for a little bit here, because I want to hear more about how you see the future and the new venture that you've chosen to invest in, and where you see the opportunity in this space now. So tell us about Otovo.ai. And what do you see as the real opportunity in the solar space currently?
The real opportunity is taking care of customers. Going back into some of the promises, or a lot of the promises that we have made as an industry, and fulfilling them. And simply put, can we solve problems within hours of broken solar systems, broken batteries, broken generators, and get them back online and producing the power in precisely the time period that the power is the most valuable? And can we take those assets and essentially monetize them, squeeze out the power that is there on an optimally running system, and if the homeowner doesn't need it, then sell it back into the wholesale market and further discount and credit the power bill for the homeowner. So it's about taking care of the homeowner. It's about taking care of the systems and the asset in the right way. If a utility or any other industry, like telecommunications and everything else, had a service company that was providing power, like residential solar power, we would be responding within minutes and hours. We're not having a debate about it. We're not having those that installed it come out there and think about how to contort their business to have that kind of response time, because that's what you do. You have a company that does nothing but fixes assets problems when they break. And that's what we're doing with the Otovo.ai. And then we're further, like I said, squeezing the remaining power, if it should be there, and further optimizing it in the wholesale system instead of doing that metering and so forth, which is obviously under a lot of pressure, as we can all agree, on a long-term basis, to going away. The other piece of this is AI. It's in the name. So how do we actually use AI? Now, we just don't talk about it because it's the hot thing du jour, that we actually use it. What are we doing? We're building our software stack from the ground up using the models. What does that mean? That's the same as like a gobbledygook. We're not using Salesforce.com. We're not paying a bunch of money to a bunch of software companies upfront to CapEx and then paying them millions of dollars in OpEx like we did at Sunnova. We're not doing that. Those days are over. We can build our own software that's tailor-made at over 90% of the cost reduction. That's pretty cool. Then we take it in there and say, how do we have customers served by AI agents that essentially makes the cost to serve a lot cheaper, and the service experience itself a lot better. Imagine if you never had to really talk to anybody to get your solar system fixed. It just happened that we had a company that actually did monitor it, really was not just saying they would, but actually did roll the truck automatically, fix the problem, and solved it, and all about without you having to pick up the phone and talk to anybody. That's pretty cool. That's what most people want, if not everybody. We're doing that. And then lastly, it's like, how do you rethink about the processes? How do you streamline some things? How do do you really need to do certain processes that we've always done as an industry? Can you X those out? Can you get rid of them? Can you make things simpler for folks? And I think we can on that. So can we deploy our technology and routing our technicians and trucks in a way that's more efficient, that matches up with what the customer wants, and it does so automatically, like Uber, right? I mean, why not have that in the space? The other side is, why can't I have technology in my hand as a Otovo service technician that tells me every single thing about this device, whether it's an inverter from Enphase or a Solar Edge or a battery from Franklin, whatever it is, that just says it, Generac generator or whatever it is, that just tells me what to do. We have that today. That's pretty cool. So no hanging on hours on end, waiting for the OEM to call service to pick you up finally, so you can ask your question as a service technician. That's a better customer experience. Why? Because it lowers the cost structure and it enhances. Hey, I got it fixed. I got out of there. Right? I don't think any homeowner was like, well, I'm so glad to see Joe still in the backyard 4 hours later trying to figure this thing out. Said no homeowner ever. Right? That's the kind of thing that really matters. Like being specific about what we're doing with AI. We're doing each and every one of these things today. It's not a prediction. It's today. What is a prediction is, can you take data from your technicians and then empower in building out our model further to teach them how to be a better technician? We're going to be doing that. Then someday, can you take that data and put it into embodied AI humanoids and have them help you as a technician? Maybe they're getting on the roof instead of you or something like that. I think that day sounds crazy, but you listen to Musk and we may be closer to that time period than we think, and that's pretty cool. So I'm not saying that that's going to happen next year, 2 years from now. Musk, I think, is, but and he's been more right than me, that's for sure. He's the richest man in the world, right? So that may be the case, but I'm thinking, 5-10 years out, there could be some tasks there that a humanoid, a robot trained with our data and with our model could be quite effective and really reduce safety risks for our people in the field.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's exciting to see where this technology is going to go when you mix the AI with robotics. But am I hearing you correctly, John, that today, with your app, a homeowner can order up a solar repair just like an Uber and have somebody there quickly, and when that person gets there, they're AI and empowered to analyze what the equipment is there and figure out what the most likely issue is to speed or to minimize the time on the job site?
Yes. Yeah. And we'll have an agent very soon, that you just upload a power bill and it tells you what the best deal is for you. And then you can ask it questions and it'll tell you, and it's there to make sure that you get the best deal. That's pretty cool. Instead of so really at the end of the day, you don't really need to talk to anybody. This will tell you exactly what you should be doing based on the facts, on the numbers.
Very interesting. And this could be used for new installations as well as for servicing existing systems?
Well, we're focused existing systems, but
Okay.
as we go through time, there's some of this technology obviously could be adapted to be used in some new installations as well. And so we'll take a look at that. But to be clear, we're focused on customers that already have assets, and we're not in the new installation business.
Okay. So what if you were to describe your ideal customer now? Is it somebody that already has solar? Is it somebody that's up and running fine, or is it somebody that's in some sort of a problem state?
Well, we'd like to have customers never have a problem, right? In our industry, they bought something, it just runs perpetually. But to your point earlier, that's not realistic. So For us, it's about our perfect customer is somebody that owns an asset. What I mean by an asset, owns a solar system with a battery, EV chargers, load manager, maybe owns a generator. Of course, the perfect customer owns all of them, right? That's a perfect customer that we can have everything bundled in there, and then we make sure that it runs. And when it doesn't run, when it breaks, we roll a truck very quickly, get somebody out there that's AI empowered. If you want to watch them come to your house, you can do that, and solves the problem, gets out of there, goes to the next one. That's our perfect situation.
Interesting. No, I mean, it sounds fantastic, John. And as you know, I think there's going to be a tremendous need for this more and more, especially, as we get past the current surge of business that's working through the pipeline right now. But, I think, Q2, Q3 next year, like you said, there's going to be probably even more contractors out of business and even more homeowners that are going to need service and support to keep those systems healthy. So it sounds like a very innovative, modern solution. Where should people go if they want to learn more about Otovo?
Just Otovo.ai. Just plug it in, come see us, look at the website. If you want to call us, you can call us. And if you don't want to call us, you can always do something that's on, just talking to the AI agent and so forth. But whatever you want to do, but Otovo.ai.
Very good. We'll work to get a link down in the description below once we get this put together. Well, John, I know we're getting towards the top of the hour here. I will give you the last word. Where else do you see, or what else do you see on the horizon for the solar industry, and what do other solar professionals that might be watching this need to know, and what steps do they need to take now?
Well, I would say that we've talked a lot about the problems of the industry, and some of those problems are still with us. The overhang of some further policy changes that could come. We don't know what the future is. Just like we didn't know 2 years ago what the future was going to hold, right? Or even a year ago. But I think overall, look, power is in really huge demand. I don't see AI slowing down at all. I see more and more compute power needed because we're going to have more and more of a capability all the way into humanoids, I think, eventually. But think autonomous vehicles and everything else that are already here with us. And to me, that means as an individual consumer, the only way that you're going to get a hold of your power bill and consumption and do it right and address what is still an existential threat of climate change is to do residential solar with batteries and EV charging and load management and so forth. And so I'm quite bullish on it. I'm still bullish on it. It was attracted my eye, call it almost 20 years ago, and I still strongly believe. I'm back in it very quickly, and it's because I truly, truly believe, and I want to make a difference in this world. And I think that's what we all want, and I think that this industry really should be, we have a lot of trials and tribulations, and we'll have more, but people should be really proud of what they do in working in this industry day in, day out. We certainly are here for the right reasons.
Yeah. And I think that's one positive that's going to come through the current shakeup is a lot of the people that just jumped on the bandwagon for solar because they thought it was a quick gold rush, gold rush mentality. A lot of those folks have left the industry now that times have, gotten a little bit tougher again. But those of us that are still here that are committed to the space, I like to see that. I like to see that the community is filled with people that actually want to be here for the right reasons and they see a brighter future. So, well, John, absolutely. I thank you for taking time to chat with our audience and just to speak with me today. Again, folks, this has been a conversation with John Berger, founder and CEO of Otovo.ai is the website, Otovo.ai. Revolutionizing the way that solar service gets performed, and definitely a company that we're going to be covering here in the future. As again, we expect that the need for solar service is only going to increase, and we want to help see homeowners that might be currently in a bad situation, back to a healthy situation with their solar system. But that pretty much does it for today's episode. I thank you all for spending some more time on the Solar Surge channel, and as always, I'm Joe Ordia here, encouraging you to get prepared and be empowered. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next episode.